Hi guys, welcome back for episode number 125 of the weekly playback. You might be seeing this video on a Sunday rather than a Monday because there's been some vote shaming going on in the board game industry, and I want to try to counteract that before elections on Tuesday. So I know I'm not a big name in this industry, and I know I don't get a lot of viewers, but I will do my best as I always do. So that's why you might see this video a day early. But first I'll talk about the games that I played, and then we can get into all of that fun stuff. Okay, all right, let's get started. Let's talk about Paella Park. This is a 2023 game for 2 to 5 players designed by Enrique Aguilar Almodovar and Eloy Pujadas, and the art is done by Esther Mendez, and it's published by Zombie Paella Games. And this is a game that I purchased at Spiel Essen in October, so last month now. I played a 5-player game of this last night, and I absolutely loved it, even though I came in very last place. So this game, I'm going to have to throw pictures because I can't hold up a board, because you actually have to put the board together. And there are 2 sides depending on whether you want to play an easier game or a game that is more for experienced board gamers. So of course we played the game which is meant more for experienced board gamers. So the side that has like the brownish border is for more experienced board gamers, and the side with the gray border is for the easier game. So I'm going to have to throw up pictures, but you're going to have a whole amusement park, and there's the park is split up into 4 different sections, and you'll see the 4 different sections on the score sheet. So each player is going to have a score sheet, and here is my really sad score sheet because I scored the lowest points. But you'll have 4 different sections of the park, and you'll get to see on that on each section the various attractions that are in each section. So that includes the various rides and the musicals, the shows that are being put on in each section. And then the rest of your sheet, you will be keeping track of your puke levels. So if you end up puking on someone or yourself, you're going to get puked on your t-shirt. You'll be keeping track of if your puke-o-meter reaches the end, then you need to go to the infirmary. So you'll be keeping track of that here. You'll be keeping track of money that you spend at shops, and then here you'll just be tallying up your points. But I will get into all of that when we get to the end game scoring. So the game is played over 4 rounds, and in each round you are going to flip over one of these time cards. So these cards will explain to you which quadrant of the amusement park is going to be under maintenance. And then you're going to put maintenance tokens to the entrances of that quadrant. That means you cannot ride any rides in that quadrant during this round. Then you'll see the wait times for the rides in all the other quadrants. The small circle indicates wait times for the smaller rides. And then each quadrant has one big ride, and that will indicate the time for the big ride, the wait time for the big ride. And you're also going to see one small little Polaroid, and that indicates where the zombie queen is going to be. She is the amusement park's mascot, and she is going to move around from round to round, and if you manage to get a photo with her, a selfie, then you can score some points. And only one person can take a picture with her per round, and I'll get into all of that when I start talking about the game. Here is a player aid for each person, which shows you the various kinds of actions and whether you're moving. If you're moving around the park, it shows you how many minutes you'll be spending in order to move around the park. So you're going to have a time tracker. So again, for a more advanced game, you're going to be using the red border side. So this is the time tracker, and it also has the puke-o-meter at the top where you keep your puke token. But you're going to be moving your meeple along this time track in order to keep track of how much time you are spending in this amusement park. So you can basically spend up to 110 minutes. I mean, you can end up going over that, but once you go over that, your turns are over for that round. So you're going to be spending time doing the various things that you're going to be doing in this game. But let me just show you some more components before we get into actually how the game plays. So here are some shopping cards. Shopping cards are cards which might give you a special ability or some kind of set collection points at the end of the game. So for example, here is a special ability card, and everyone starts the game with 2 of these shopping cards. This one will allow you to move this thing by one more quadrant. So it's not set up right now because you have to, set it up with a standee. But this guy, he's pointing at these things and you're going to be spinning it and you'll also be spinning it on this side as well for the pucometer. But you're going to be able to, with this card, advance the spinner by one quadrant, one slice or whatever if you want to. There's a pill that allows you to move your pucometer token all the way to the start, which is nice because otherwise if you reach the end you have to go to the infirmary. Here is a golf cart which lets you travel anywhere in the park for free, basically, meaning you don't spend any time, which is really nice. Here's a wrench which will allow you to actually go on a ride in the quadrant that is sealed off for maintenance in that particular round, whereas otherwise with a wrench you would not be able to do that. And there's a fast pass, which lets you go on a ride without using up any wait time. And then there are some of these cards that can be used for set collections. For example, here are some balloons. So if you manage to collect the balloons, you'd get 3 points. But if you manage to collect the balloons plus the 2 other items that are souvenir items, then you can get a total another, I think then they're worth 5 points each, or you gain an additional 5 points. I can't remember how that works because no one in our game did that, but I would have to check how that works. And the lollipop, that's the last souvenir. So lollipop, balloons, and the doll. So those are shopping cards. And again, you start the game with 2 shopping cards and you can acquire more throughout the game if you stop off at a shop and go shopping. So you would spend a coin from your score sheet in order to go shopping. But I'll get into the actions in more detail in a little bit. You're going to have 2 main cards that with objectives that you're going to be trying to meet, and you can choose to keep one, or I think you can keep both of them, but in our game everyone just kept one. But you'll be dealt 2 of these at the beginning of the game, and these are personal objectives that you need to try to meet, and if you don't meet them you'll actually lose the points rather than gain them. So if you met this objective by the end of the game you would gain 15 points, but if you did not meet it you would lose 15 points. So this one says you need to watch 3 shows and visit 3 water attractions in the park. So there's a variety of different kinds of objectives. Let me see if I can find one that I had. So I had to go on 4, this was one I had, which I met. I had to go on 4 super thrilling attractions and 3 like medium level attractions, and then I would gain 15 points. So again, each person is dealt 2 of these at the beginning of the game, and you can choose to keep one or both of them. I believe you have to keep at least one of them though. The rules specify that you must keep at least one. With the other objectives, you can choose not to keep any. You will be dealt 2 at the beginning of the game and you can choose to keep 0, 1, or 2 of them. And these are smaller objective cards, and there will be an opportunity to gain more throughout the game if you want. So these are some more objective cards that you can try to meet. So for example, I had one where I had to watch a specific show. I can't find that one exactly, but it looked something like this. So it indicated which show I need to watch, and I gained 3 points for that. So these are the lesser objective cards, and there will be, in a 5-player game, there will be 10 of these available next to the board for you to try to get throughout the game if you want. Just 10. So you'll add up the number of players and put that number of cards on each side of the board, because there are 2 information booths at the park, and if you stop at the information booth as your action, then you can pick up a new objective card. So how does this game play? So you're always going to look at the time track, and you're going to look at the section that is farthest behind, and then look at the first meeple in that section to see who is taking their turn. So it's kind of like patchwork in that way, where there's a time track and you're always going to see who's farthest behind, but you're always going to look at the first person in that section. And that's because if you end up taking your turn and you end up landing in the same time section as someone else, you would place your meeple behind theirs. So they would then get to go first when that section comes up for turn taking. And basically, you're in a round, you're going to keep on taking turns until everyone has passed the 110-minute mark. And you might even end up going over and going beyond 0 again and then starting again, but you're not going to go back to 0 at the start of the next round. So on your turn, there are a number of actions you can do. So the actions you can do are to walk around the park. So you can travel. So you can go from one attraction to another. When you travel, you are going to be traveling along the walking pathways. There are a couple of these. So there's 2 anchors and there's 2 railway symbols. If you use those, then you can jump from one railway to another. So that would count as one movement. So if you move between 1 and 4 sections, so you're going to count up the number of attractions you stop at along the way. If you move between 1 and 4, you will move up your time marker by 10 minutes. If you go between 5 and 7, then 20 minutes, 8 and 10, then 30 minutes. So you cannot move beyond 10 attractions from where you are if you do the move action. Then your turn is over. So if you stop at a ride, you cannot move and then go on that ride. Like the ride will be your next action. So another action is to visit an attraction. So visiting attractions, there are quite a number of attractions you can visit and they all have different rules associated with them. So if you decide to go on a ride, number 1, you cannot go on a ride that again is under maintenance in that round. So before you decide to actually ride the ride, you can decide if you want to cut the line. So you will see how many minutes you have to wait for that particular ride that you are currently at. And again, you're going to look at the round card and that will tell you what the wait time is for the ride that you're at, depending on which quadrant you're in and whether it's the big ride, or just a smaller ride. And then you can decide to cut your wait time in increments of 10. And then you have to spin the spinner to see whether the security guard catches you. If the spinner lands on a security guard like it did just here, then instead of being able to cut the line and reduce your wait time, you're going to have to add that wait time to your total wait time. So your marker is now going to move around the time track even more spaces. But if you did not get caught by the security guard, then it's going to move around fewer spaces, which is nice. So you must spin for the security guard. Then of course you'll move your time marker around the time track to indicate how many minutes you had to wait for this ride. And then you would circle the ride that you just went on your score sheet to indicate that you went on that ride and earned those points. But every ride has a puke factor. So every ride has a puke factor that you need to spin against. So again, you would spin this, and if the number, so for example, this has a puke factor, the top ride has a puke factor of 4. So if I rolled -1, that means 4 minus 1, I go up 3 spaces on the puke track. So I'm going to draw a puke symbol on my t-shirt, on my score sheet, and I also get to puke on someone else. So you have to draw 1 puke symbol on your shirt, and then you decide which other player you're going to puke on, and they also have to draw a puke symbol on their t-shirt. And every puke symbol stain you have on your shirt is worth -1 point at the end of the game. So that is what riding a ride is. So you first decide if you want to cut in line and reduce your wait time, but you might end up increasing your wait time instead. And you also roll to spin in order to see whether you puked or not. If you ever get to the end of the pukometer, which again is on the time track board, then you must go to the infirmary. You have to then go to the hospital. So the pukometer is at the top of this time board. And as you can see, if you reach the end, then at the start of your next turn, you move the pukometer back here, but it is going to cost you points as indicated over here. So you'll see on this sheet that the first time you have to do that, it's going to cost you 2 points. But the next time you have to do it, it's going to cost you 5 points. But there is a way to counteract moving up on the pukometer. So there were those pills, which we talked about, that you can get from a shopping cart, but there is also restaurants on this board that you can visit. And anytime you visit a restaurant, which is one of the actions you can take. So let's suppose you walked to a restaurant on one turn, then your next turn you visit the restaurant. That will just allow you to move your puke token all the way back to the start happy face. It is going to cost 10 minutes. So all of these actions will cost you a certain number of minutes on the time track. So visiting a show is another action you can do, which is a little bit more tricky. So with the show, at the beginning of the game, there are going to be these time tokens that are going to be randomly placed at the shows, at the theaters around the park. So the time tokens say 0, 30, 60, 90 on them. So 0, 30, 60, and 90. So you're going to randomly place these on the various shows at the park, and you can only see a show if your meeple is in that show's section. So you'll see on the time track again, you'll see the show symbols here. So, and depending on, like, so this show would be within the 30-minute section. So if you are at the show on the map that has the 30 time token above it, then you can see the show when your meeple is in this section. You can end up going to a show early. So let's suppose you end up at a show on the map, but your meeple has not reached that time spot on the time track yet. You can then push your meeple all the way up. You can never go backwards, but you can push it up, and then additionally spend the time that it takes to see the show. So that is going to advance you quite a bit on the time track if you do that. So every show will cost you 20 minutes on the time track. And then you would simply circle the show that you watched on your sheet. If you go to an info booth, so again, there are two information booths in the amusement park, one on the left side and one on the right side. That would allow you to draw new objective cards. You would pick up a couple, decide which one you want to keep, and the other would go at the bottom of the deck. And again, in a 5-player game, there's only going to be 5 on each side. If you are the last person to go there, you have to just take the card that is there. So you don't get a choice, but you also cannot choose to not take it. So it can be a bit risky because, again, those are minus points if you don't complete those objectives by the end of the game. I already explained restaurants. So if you go to a restaurant, you can move your Pucometer token all the way back to the smiley face. But again, that will take 10 minutes because every action costs minutes. If you go shopping, you can go to one of the shops that's indicated on the amusement park. So let me see if I can just find a shop for you just to show you what a shop token or icon looks like. So here is a shop. So if you stopped here on one turn and then on your next turn decided to go shopping, you would cross off a coin from your player sheet, and that would allow you to draw 3 shopping cards and keep 1. And again, those shopping cards can come in really handy. So for example, if you get a wrench, then you can go on a ride in the area that's under maintenance, or you might get a puke pill or something like that. So they can be very, very beneficial. So, you know, it might pay to go shopping and lose that coin, which would have otherwise given you a point at the end of the game. So that was one other action you can do. Now the photograph. So if you want to take a photograph with the mascot, Princess Zombie, the zombie princess, and again, where she is going to be in the park is determined by the card that was flipped over for that round, which will indicate which quadrant she's in. So you're going to find the Polaroid symbol in that quadrant and place her there. Now, in order to take a photograph with her, of course, you have to be there at the start of your turn. So you can never go to a location, an attraction, and then also perform that attraction, do that attraction in the same turn. You always have to do it in the next turn. So first you have to get to her, and then on your next turn, you can take a photograph. When you take a photograph, the number of points you get is determined by where you are on the time track. So if you happen to be towards the bottom, towards the end of your park visit for that round, then you'll get even more points for getting a photograph with her. It would be like 12 points. However, if you get a photograph with her towards the beginning of the time track, it would only be 3 points. So how many points you get for taking a photograph with the mascot is dependent on where your token is on the time track. And then when you take a photo with her, she goes back to her break room. So only one person will get a photograph with her per round. So there's only 4 chances in the game to get a photograph with her. And unfortunately, I did not get a photograph with her. So that is essentially how the game plays. So again, everyone will just keep taking turns until they hit the end of the time track. It might even go past it, because if you're, like, for example, if you're at the 90-minute mark and or let's say you're at the 100-minute mark and you do an action that costs 20 minutes, you're obviously going to go past the 110 and end up over here. So that is possible. And then you would start the next round while you're over here. So it is possible to go and end up on the other side of the track. So for the first 3 rounds, that's what you're going to do. At the last round, you have the opportunity to go watch a fireworks show. So what you're going to do is when you decide that you no longer want to take turns or no longer can take turns, turns, you move your time marker meeple to the fireworks show. And the first person to get to the fireworks is going to get the most points. They'll get 10 points or something like that. And then the points decrease exponentially from there. So if you want to do that, you can do that in the end of the game, in the very last round, and forego a certain number of turns if you think you're not going to be able to achieve anything else. And then the game is over. So at the end of the game, you will score points for all of the attractions. Oh wait, before I forget, in each section, if you were the first person to complete all of the attractions within one quadrant of the board, you would get to circle this ribbon. Unfortunately, I never got to do it. This is not my score sheet. I never managed to do it, but if you do, then that might earn you an additional 10, 8, 6, or 8 points, depending on which quadrant you went to all the attractions in. And attractions means shows as well as rides. It does not include like restaurants or shopping or info booths. It doesn't include any of that. So then at the end of the game, you will score points for all of the shows you watched, and every show is simply 7 points. You will get points for all of the rides you went on, and rides can vary all the way from 12 points down to 3, or no, actually the lowest amount of points is 2 points. So all the way from 2 up to 12 points, depending on which ride you went on. Then again, if you got one of those ribbons, you would get points for that. If you took photographs with the zombie Paella mascot, you would get points for that. You would get your points for where you were in the fireworks show when you were in the last round and went there. You would get points for the objective cards that you met. So again, you have the main objectives and then the smaller objectives. So you would collect all your points for that. And then shopping cards, set collection points. If you have any set collection points from the shopping cards, you would get points for that. And then for each coin you have left over that you did not spend throughout the game, you would get 1 point for that. Then you will lose points for all of the puke stains on your shirt, and then for any infirmary visits. So each puke stain is minus 1 point, and then these are a different number of points depending on how many visits you had, and then you get your total. So I scored like 80 something in this game because first I forgot to subtract my puke stains, and I had the most puke stains in this game and came in with the lowest amount of points. But it is a super fun game. I really enjoyed it. I think that there is just a really good balance between strategy and luck, and and it really feels like that you're going to an amusement park. So when you're actually in an amusement park, which I don't like going to anymore, I'm not really big on like really scary rides anymore. So, but yeah, so like traditional amusement parks with like really big roller coasters, not my thing. But yeah, so it really resembles like going to an amusement park. Like you're actually feeling like, okay, like I'm gonna get sick on this ride. How much will I puke? Will I puke? It's all luck dependent. So you are going to be spinning this. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention, another way to get a shopping cart, sorry, should have mentioned this before. So this guy, he's actually going to be facing this section. So whenever you see a show, you get to pick one of these paella ingredients and spin this. And if it lands on that ingredient, then you just get to pick up a shopping cart. Just something a little fun. So that's another way to get shopping carts throughout the game. Forgot to mention that. But yeah, it's just a really fun game, like where you're traveling around the park and you feel like constrained for time because your timer meatball is moving along the time track. So you really have to be careful about, planning ahead in this game. So, but at the same time, when you're planning, someone else might come and ruin your plans. Like for example, I really thought I was going to complete one of the quadrants first, but then someone else came in and he got it first. And I was like, all my efforts just felt like they were being wasted. So I think it's a really fun game. It's a competitive amusement park themed game with really cool artwork. Like I absolutely love the art style in this game, and it's just a lot of fun. And yes, there's a little bit of take that with the puking, but also fun. Like it's just kind of fun to see how much puke each person has on their shirt and then decide who you want to puke on if you ended up puking. And yeah, you'll probably never say the word puke as much as you do when playing this game, like for any other board game. So if that's something you want to do, then definitely check out Paella Park. So again, I picked this up at Spiel Essen, and it's published by Zombie Paella. I do not believe it's available in the USA yet, but it is super fun, and I imagine it'll probably get picked up by a USA publisher at some point, just because it's a really fun game, and I really enjoyed it. So yeah, so that is Paella Park. If you have any questions about it, leave your questions in the comments below. So let's move on. So let's talk about Caracas, and I hope I pronounced that correctly this time. So this is a 2024 game for 1 to 5 players designed by Peter Joustra and Come van Moorsel, and it's published by Koali Games. This is for 1 to 5 players, and this is a review copy which I received from Spiel Essen, from the designer and publisher. So this is a fun drafting and tile placement game, very thinky. So it says right on the box, choices affect choices, and that is very true in this game. So basically, you're going to have one main board, and this is always going to have tiles on it, and then each player is going to have this border, and you're placing your tiles underneath this. The tile that you're going to have to place next will be placed here. So at the start of the game, everyone will take a turn to pick a tile from this board and simply put it up here. Then for your first turn, you're going to place that tile underneath one of these columns. And then depending on where you placed it, that is the next tile you're going to have to take. So if you placed it underneath the triangle, for example, your tile, then you will need to take the tile from the triangle spot on this board. If you placed it underneath the spiral, then you would take this tile. If you placed it underneath the square, you would take that one. And if you placed it underneath the flower, you would take this tile. So where you place your tile dictates which tile you have to take next from this board. So you are placing tiles adjacent to each other. So again, if you place a tile underneath the triangle, your next tile can go underneath any of the other slots or underneath the triangle. It might be possible that you don't have a tile placed underneath, one section, but then later on, as one column gets longer, you might be able to place a tile adjacent to something and have kind of a little gap. But you are going to be placing tiles adjacent to like other tiles. And again, you're constricted to just the 4 columns beneath that board. So there are 3 different types of tiles in this game. There are savanna tiles, which are yellow. There are swamp tiles, which are dark green, and forest tiles, which are light green. So those are the 3 different types of tiles you have, and all the tiles in animals will score differently at the end of the game. So the rules are very simple. Again, you're just going to take a tile based on where you placed your current tile. Yes, and I just want to double check to make sure. Yeah. I don't think that there's any other specific rules about tile placement. It actually doesn't really say much. Like, the rules themselves are very short, and then the scoring is much longer. So for scoring, so at the end of the game, you are going to score your different animals. So jaguars can only score 1 point if they're on a tile which isn't adjacent to any tile with another jaguar. Capybaras, you'll score your biggest group of 1 or more capybaras. So a group is formed by orthogonally connected tiles with the animal in each tile. So again, if you have multiple groups of capybaras, you're going to score 1 point for your biggest group, 1 point per capybara for your biggest group. Howler monkeys. So maybe I should show you the animals as I'm talking about them. So here we have a capybara and now a howler monkey. So you're going to score your smallest group of 1 or more howler monkeys. So again, 1 point per monkey. Piranhas. So if you have any tiles that have the rivers on them, then you will score points. So piranha in your river basin with the most piranhas, you will get 1 point for each piranha in your river basin with the most piranhas. And connected rivers form 1 river basin. And then finally, ibis. You will score, so ibis in an orthogonal or diagonal sequence of at least 3 tiles with 1 ibis in each tile. So if you have like 4 ibises in a row, that would be 4 points. If you have like 5 in a row, like that would be 5 points. You're not going to double count an ibis that appears like in a row. Then there are rare animals. So there's a big variety of rare animals in this game, and their scoring condition is indicated right on the tile. So for example, here we have a toucan. So this toucan, you will score 2 points if you have this toucan placed in a diagonal sequence of 4 tiles. That doesn't mean that each tile has to have a toucan on it, no, just that this needs to be placed in that kind of a sequence. So there's a bunch of different kinds of rare animals. There's sloths, there's anaconda, anteater, tarantula, poison frog, kinkajou, shrimp, squirrel monkey, butterfly, guppy, caiman, sotalia, electric eel, flamingo, toucan, spectacled bear, harpy, venomous snake, and tapir. So all the rare animals are listed here with their scoring condition. So each rare animal scores differently, and again, 2 points if you manage to meet its scoring condition. Then you're going to look at all the tiles in your area and score those. So for the biggest jungle area, the person who has the biggest jungle area would get the most points, and then going down from there. So in a 5-player game, for example, the player with the biggest jungle area would score 4 points, then the next player 3 points, 2 points, 1.0 points. In case of a tie, you take the average victory points rounded up. Most savanna areas. So jungle, you want one big area. Savannas, you want to try to keep separated. So whoever has the most separate savanna areas would, of course, get the most points. Fewest swamp areas. So swamps, you want the smallest amount of swampy areas, and then again you would look at the points. Then you're going to look at the most forks and mergers in one river basin. So a fork and a merger is, for example, like this thing. So you're going to look at your biggest river basin, your one river basin, and count up your forks and mergers, and whoever has the most will of course get the most points for that. At the end of the game, if you have any dead end rivers, you will lose 1 point for each dead end river. Now, if you had this tile like placed on the edge over here, for example, at the edge of your board, that is not a dead end because that's just going off somewhere and it's not connected to anything. A dead end is like, for example, this. So now you have dead ends because this like goes into this tile, but it's not connected to a river. So this would be -1 point. That is what a dead end is. So if it's at the edge of your layout, not a dead end. So again, you'll lose 1 point for each dead end river, and then whoever has the most points will win. So again, super easy to learn game, but the trick is basically, you know, making that difficult decision of where you're going to place that tile and how it might affect your scoring, but that's also going to affect which tile you're going to get next. And one of the good things, I guess, about this game is you can kind of plan your turn while other people are taking their turn. So you can kind of say, like, okay, this tile would work really well over here, but, you know, if you have your heart set on that, then you might not get the tile that's currently on offer in that section of the board because someone might take it before it's your turn again. So while you can kind of plan ahead for your turn, not necessarily. Because if that tile, where you decided you wanted to place it was really dependent on which tile was on the board, by the time it's your turn, that tile could be gone. So it might be the case that you don't even decide where you want to place your tile until it's your turn. And that can lead to a much longer game. So if you're playing a 5-player game of this, it's going to be a longer game because people are going to then be evaluating where they want to place their tile in their, you know, landscape, and determining whether that will get them points or not, and then they will determine, you know, that determines which tile they'll have next. So it can be a little bit AP inducing, analysis paralysis. So if you don't want a game where you have to wait for other people to make decisions, maybe not the game for you, but it is quite a thinky game. Like the puzzle of deciding where to place it, and then you know, that determines which tile you get next. Like, very interesting. I don't think I've seen a game like do it quite like that. So it's a really cool tile placement game for that reason, I think. But maybe you might want to play at a lower player count if you don't want a super long game of this. But yeah, I would recommend it. So if you like tile placement games and you like really thinky games, then you might enjoy this one because, you know, it does have that interesting element to it that I haven't seen in any other games. So yeah, so thank you again to the designer and publisher for this review copy. I enjoyed my play of it, and I do want to give the solo mode a try. And if I do, you know, happen to do that sometime soon, of course, I'll talk about it whenever that happens. So thank you again for this review copy. And yeah, so that was Caracas, and I hope I said that right this time. Caracas. Yes, so let's move on. So I think I will just leave it at those two games for now. You know, my memory is starting to fail me, like all these other games which I played within the last month, a month and a half now, that I am forgetting how they play, so I'll just need to play them again. So I hope I will get to play Kelp again, because that would be fun to talk about. I really enjoyed my play of Kelp, and you know, I'm a huge fan of Weberson Santiago, who did the artwork for it, so I hope I'll get to talk about that, and maybe some of the other games that I had originally mentioned a few weeks ago. But yeah, so hopefully we'll get to those later. So for now, we'll just leave it at these two games. So let's go on to games that I am backing or have received. I don't have anything to show in terms of stuff I've received, so let's just go to what I'm backing, which is a lot. So a number of them are like for games that I covered though, so I'm just backing those at the pledge level in order to get my production copies. So one of the games I'm backing, which now I'm not too happy about, and you'll see why later in this video, is Harvest Fall Festival. So I'm backing the expansion for Harvest, which is a game that I really, really love, but I'm not too happy with the designer right now, and I'll talk about that later when I talk about voting stuff. So yeah, so I'm backing that, but maybe I might cancel and just see if I can purchase it when my local game store has it, because I feel like that they would back this expansion. Maybe I'll just ask them, and if they're getting it, then I'll probably just cancel my pledge so that I don't even have to then pay for shipping. That might be nice. I'm backing Tend, which is the new IV Games game, in order to get my production copy of that. So I'm backing that at the pledge manager level. Same with Shallow Sea, and same with Cat Sudoku, Ultimate Voyage, and Mutagen. So those are all games that I'm backing in order to get my production copies. Not Harvest Fall Festival, that doesn't fall into that. Oh, and Sweetlands. So I'm backing Sweetlands just at a no reward level. I don't even know if that would give me pledge manager access, but it allows me to follow along with the campaign, which is nice. And I absolutely loved Sweetlands. Really amazing game. So I'm hoping I can get a production copy of that, because that is an amazing, like, heavier Euro style game with just incredible artwork and incredible components. So Sweetlands is on Kickstarter now. So yeah, so I hope I can get that. That's on Kickstarter until November 27th. And then, as previously mentioned, I'm still backing Tomton and Mad Kala and Cat Packs. Let me just see if Tomton is funding yet now, because the last time I did a video, it was not yet funding. It would make me sad if it doesn't fund. Oh, we're getting closer. It's 11 days left, but we're getting closer. We're about like $400 away now. So almost there, maybe we'll make it. So yeah, so those are the games that I am backing. And no one entered the giveaway for the last giveaway that I did. I don't know if you guys just didn't see it, but as you know, I don't mark them as giveaway in the timestamps, because then I feel like people would just come in just for the giveaway and not bother with any of the other content. But if you have been watching my videos, then you know in which section the giveaway would be. It's possible I might end up giving that game away now to FlagCon, to the FlagCon library. I don't know. But I will be doing more giveaways in the future. So if you want to try to win a game, if you've seen my content before, then you know in which section those giveaways will appear. But I'm never gonna like label it as a giveaway in the timestamps. So let's see, updates. So yes, there will be no new video next week. Because I am going to FlagCon. So FlagCon is the weekend of November 8th. And so I won't have an opportunity to shoot a video that weekend. So the next new video that you will get after this will be on November 18th. So yeah, so no new video for a little bit. So yeah, so cats, I'm actually going to be cleaning out all the shelters tomorrow. So I've got that on my calendar. So maybe in the next video, I'll have pictures to share or something after I've cleaned up all of their shelters, put in fresh straw, and just tidied up the areas a bit to get them all ready for winter. So yeah, so maybe, you know, I'll have some new photos to share. But yeah, cat stuff is going well, and as always happy to receive donations if you want to help feed all of the stray cats at my 2 colonies. But they're going, you know, everyone's doing well, and they're all they're all just, you know, super cute as always. So yeah, so let's move on to book clubs. So for this week, we were supposed to read chapters 5, 6, 7, and 8. And I feel like the story is finally starting to go somewhere. Like, you know, with Madeline's sleepwalking, with, you know, learning about her being more about her sickness, I guess, learning about the hares that, seem to have some kind of illness around the property. Yeah, just, we're starting to learn more. I still wish that they would give, the author would give a little bit more because it's a little bit slow moving for me. Like, I appreciate all of the atmosphere that the author has created in this book. I actually don't know the author's gender, but yeah, I'm really, yeah, it's a good read so far. I'm enjoying it. I just wish that I was getting a little bit more from it because, yeah, just very slow to give details and very slow to really get the plot out. But we're getting there, I feel like. So we're starting to learn that there's definitely something going on around this area or this property, this house, where, the hares around the property like have to drag their legs, and the woman Madeline did too, and now she's dead, but things don't stay dead. Animals don't stay dead in this book. So looking forward to seeing what happens next. But yeah, it's an interesting read so far. It's not like a scary read. Like, I don't feel scared if I'm reading this at night with the lights off or something. I'm not like sitting there terrified. So it's not that kind of scary, but it is, it's got a creepy atmosphere to it. So that's nice, I guess. So yeah, so let me know what you think so far and what you think is going on. Like, I really just do not know. I'm starting to think that maybe the mushroom woman did something. Like, maybe she, like, Mrs. Porter or Potter or whatever her name is, maybe she did something. Maybe she like put something in the water and that's causing all of this to happen. I don't know. Just a guess. Who knows? What was her name again? I can't remember her name, but yeah, maybe that's what's happening. I really don't know. Let me know what you think is happening, and maybe we can see if we're right or not with our predictions. So for next time, since let's see how many chapters are left. 9, 10, 11, 12. And 13. Yeah, so for next time, just finish the book because we're actually almost done. So for the next time, just finish the book. And so let's make our predictions and figure out what's happening. So yeah, so I think the mushroom lady is doing something. I think that's what's causing everyone to be sick. Like, she seems nice, but sometimes the people who seem the nicest can be the most sinister, right? So maybe she's poisoned the water with like some poison mushrooms or something, and that's what's causing, the Madeline and the hares to be unwell and sick and die. Who knows? Let me know what you think. And so finish the book, and then we can decide what to read next after that. So yeah, so let's move on. So for our Palestine book club, we decided that we would start reading this. Really easy read, like compared to the last book we read, which, if you missed the book club, was the 100 Years War on Palestine. Like, oh my God, this is such an easier, breezy read compared to that book. So we were supposed to read the preface and the first chapter, which are super duper short. So I like in the preface how he just basically goes over what he's going to be talking about in this book. So, he starts off by saying that the willful misunderstanding of history can promote oppression and protect a regime of colonization and occupation. So he's basically laying out why this book is so important and why we should be reading it, because Israel, spends a lot of money, as we know, billions and billions of dollars on its propaganda every year in order to perpetuate the myths that exist around the state of Israel and allow it to continue with its oppression and colonization without getting the backlash that it deserves from governments around the world. Like, people are, protesting. The people are protesting and uprising, but a lot of governments around the world are just letting Israel get away with what it's doing. And a lot of that is based on the myths that they have created about themselves and about the Palestinians. So it says the Zionist historical account of how the disputed land became the state of Israel is based on a cluster of myths that subtly cast doubt on the Palestinians' moral right to the land. So that's why it's so important to read this, because you need to learn what those myths are and how Israel is using those myths in order to perpetuate a genocide right now. So it says here, however, if the Palestinian struggle is against a colonist project, then they are an anti-colonialist movement. and their international image will be very different from the one Israel and its supporters try to impose on world public opinion. So basically, if he can break down the myths that exist about Palestinians being terrorists and not belonging to that region, then people will see them as the anti-colonialist movement that they are, and it would change the world of public opinion. And that's why this book is so important. So those are just some of the statements in the preface. So just one more quote that I highlighted. Refuting mythologies that sustain injustice should be of benefit to everyone living in the country or wishing to live there. It forms a basis on which all its inhabitants might enjoy the great achievements that only one privileged group currently has access to. And by the way, this book, as he mentions right in the preface, is written by an Israeli Jew who cares about his own society as much as he does about the Palestinian one. So written by an Israeli Jew living in Israel who acknowledges all the myths that currently exist about Israel and Palestine. So this book is split up into two different parts. So the first part is the fallacies of the past, and then part two will be the fallacies of the present. And I really like how in the very back there's a timeline. So if you want to see a timeline of everything, that is on page 149. And of course, there are notes. So he cites his sources. So, this is very basic reading, but he refers to Rashid Khalidi. So if you want to, see where the statements he's making are coming from, refer to his notes, look at his bibliography, and see where those statements and facts are coming from. So chapter 1, the myth is that Palestine was an empty land. This is a myth that is, propagated by Israel, that, it was a barren land. Palestinians didn't know how to take care of it. They were uneducated. They just, were basically, savages, that they just didn't know how to farm. They didn't know how to take care of the land. Which is completely untrue. Like if you see Palestinians today and see the love they have for their land, the olive trees, which take a very long time to grow and mature and everything, and how the Zionists are just coming in and destroying the olive trees of all of the Palestinians. Like if this was your land, you would not be going around destroying the olive trees. You would not be destroying them so easily like you are, and it's the Palestinians who are crying over these trees which are being destroyed. Like they genuinely love their land, and it's being destroyed and taken away from them. So he wrote, there is a wide consensus among scholars that it was the Romans who granted the land the name Palestina, which predated all other similar references to the land as Palestine. So as I mentioned in a recent video, someone had come onto my YouTube channel and talked about how Palestine didn't exist. He says Palestine doesn't exist, but it did exist. It doesn't. The only way in which it did not exist is according to Western colonial concepts of nationhood. But Palestine did exist, and it was referred to as Palestine even by Jewish people who were living there long before the Zionist project started. And there are documents that show that. There are documents that show that it was called Palestine. So then he just basically goes into a history of Palestine and who was living there and how that land was being used and everything. So he talks a bit about the Ottoman period and so on. So the Ottomans remained there for 400 years from 1517, and their legacy is still felt today in several respects. So it says when the Ottomans arrived in 1517, which is when they began occupying that land, less than 5% of the population was Jewish, and probably 10 to 15% were Christian. The rest were Muslim. So a lot of Jews who, lived in the land from a long time ago had converted to Christianity and then Islam. So, the chapter talks about that as well. It talks about, the people, who they were, and, some conversions and stuff like that. So he goes through the whole story of how people were claiming that Palestine was just a desert, and that farmers did not, cultivate the land, that it wasn't theirs, that they didn't take care of it, and so on. So he talks about the history of how that myth was, propagated. But he says Palestine, rather than being a desert, was a thriving Arab society, mostly Muslim, predominantly rural, but with vibrant urban centers. Yeah, so it says outside of Israel, in particular in the United States, the assumption that the promised land was empty, desolate, and barren before the arrival of Zionism is still alive and kicking and is therefore worth attending to. So it's important to break down this myth because it's one of the myths that people use to argue that Zionists have come and made the land better and that Palestinians didn't know what to do with it or weren't taking care of it. Yeah, so speaking of the Ottoman Empire, so I studied the Ottoman Empire, and one of the things that people don't know about the Ottoman Empire is they had what was called the millet system. So the millet system allowed Christians and Jews to have their own courts. So Muslims had their own courts, Jews had their own courts, and Christians had their own courts. And believe it or not, many Jewish and Christian women opted to have their matters settled in Islamic courts. Because, you know, one thing I say, one thing that Muslims will say, I guess, is, people believe their religions to be perfect. So Muslims will say Islam is perfect, but people are not. So people who claim to be putting, having these Islamic governments that do not adhere to the principles of Islam are basically bastardizing what Islam is. But Islam actually did give women a lot of rights, which is why Christian and Jewish women during the Ottoman Empire opted to use Islamic courts because they were given more rights to divorce. They were given rights to land and so on, inheritance, which at that time Jewish and Christian courts were not giving to women. But inheritance is allowed for women in Islam. Divorce is allowed. Lots of things were allowed for women in Islam, which were not allowed for Christian and Jewish women. So if you want to talk about the Ottoman Empire, like that's an important thing to keep in mind, is the millet system, which I guess many people unfortunately do not know about. So he just talks about, the Ottoman Empire and how Palestine began to develop as a nation long before the arrival of the Zionist movement. So he goes and talks about what started happening in the world as these various, nations, these Arab nations were starting to think in a more nationalistic sense in the terms of how the West was viewing nationalism and statehood. So it just talks a little bit about that. So it says, as elsewhere in the Middle East and beyond, Palestinian society was introduced to this powerful defining concept of the 19th and 20th centuries, the nation. So you see, and he talks about what we learned about in this book, about how Palestinians wanted this nation, but unfortunately, the British kind of screwed that up. They did screw it up. So he says, he refers to Khalidi, whose book we just recently read, and he says, Khalidi in particular shows how patriotic feelings, local loyalties, Arabism, religious sentiments, and higher levels of education and literacy were the main constituents of the new nationalism, and how it was only later that resistance to Zionism played an additional crucial role in defining Palestinian nationalism. He says he demonstrated how modernization, the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, and the greedy European quest for territories in the Middle East contributed to the solidification of Palestinian nationalism before Zionism made its mark on Palestine and the British promise of a Jewish homeland in 1917. And he talks about the newspaper Palestine, which was even mentioned in the book we read previously. And of course, Palestine is Palestine. Okay, so then it says, following the rather infamous Sykes-Picot Agreement signed in 1916 between Britain and France, the two colonial powers divided the area into new nation states. So as this, area was divided, a new sentiment developed, a more local, vibrant variant of nationalism named in Arabic Wataniya. As a result, Palestine began to see itself as an independent Arab state. Without the appearance of Zionism on its doorstep, Palestine would probably have gone the same way as Lebanon, Jordan, or Syria and embraced a process of modernization and growth. But unfortunately, it was never given that option because of the British and the Zionists. And then it even mentions, like, it talks a little bit about the geography of Palestine and how people were united, given the different kinds of geographical boundaries. And then it says, in 1918, Palestine was therefore more united than in the Ottoman period, but there were to be further changes. While waiting for the final international approval of Palestine's status in 1923, the British government renegotiated the borders of the land, creating a better defined geographical space for the national movements to struggle over and a clearer sense of belonging for the people living in it. So it says, the reshaping of the borders helped the Zionist movement to conceptualize geographically Eretz Israel, the land of Israel where only Jews had the right to the land and its resources. So as you can see, this chapter, I only highlighted a few sentences here and there, but he basically talks about the history of Palestine, who was living there, how it was the Palestinians and not the Jewish people at the time that Zionists came in and claimed that it was their land. I think it's really important that we break down these myths and see the truth behind the state of Israel. Unfortunately, again, I always feel like those of us who are reading the books, that break down these myths and the Israeli propaganda that we see every day are not the ones who should be reading them. It's other people who should be reading them. But I hope that by us reading these and learning more and more, we can educate our friends and family more and more. We can make posts that, talk about this. So if you feel, brave enough, you can make a Facebook post educating your friends and family about what's happening. You can make Instagram stories. You can talk about what's happening and try to educate more and more your own circles of family and friends, because that's how knowledge spreads. If we don't do that, then we will not be able to counteract the Israeli propaganda that has basically taken over the West and, allows Israel to continue to commit its genocide. Since we're not going to have a video until the 18th again, I think we should read a bit more than just 2 chapters. So why, it's a really short book, but why don't we read chapters 2, 3, and 4? And then let me see how many chapters are in the book in total. So yeah, if we do 2, 3, and 4, then 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah. So let's do for next time, do 2, 3, and 4, which is the Jews were a people without a land. Zionism is Judaism, and Zionism is not colonialism. So I think that would be good. So yeah, for next time, read chapters 2, 3, and 4, and let me know what you think about this book so far in the comments below. I think it's a really easy read, but a really important read. And again, I think it's helpful to see the notes in the back so that you can see where he's getting his information from. So people can't say he's just making this shit up. Like, he's citing his sources. So yeah, so for next time, please read the next 3 chapters. And yeah, so let's move on. So with the elections coming up, certain posts have been made by certain people in this industry, and I want to talk about them because I think it's important to talk about them and put some alternative opinions out there in the board game space, because unfortunately, people worship Eric Lang, and I will never understand why. Like, just because he's created 1 or 2 good board games does not mean that he fucking knows everything about everything. But unfortunately, he feels he does, and he feels that he needs to give his opinion on everything. So he posted on October 30th, if you have the privilege, I encourage voting the lesser evil for president this time. More importantly, I strongly encourage voting aggressively down ballot. It's the most effective, bloodless way to change the country. Do I agree it's the most effective, bloodless way to change the country? Absolutely not. And here's why. Because right now, the Democratic Party is basically a fascist party. Like, there is no difference right now between the Democratic and Republican Party. There really isn't. And if you think that there's a difference, like, look at who Harris has gotten to support her in her bid for president. She is getting the approval of all these neocons. How do you think she gets the approval of neocons? And look at who she gets money from. Like, are we just going to ignore the fact that AIPAC basically runs this country? Are we just going to ignore the fact that AIPAC gives millions and millions and millions of dollars to our politicians, which includes both Republicans and Democrats, and that they don't actually give a fucking shit about the regular person in America? Like, Are we just going to always ignore that fact? So there is a Jewish person who I follow on Instagram who is anti-Zionist, and they posted a really great video explaining why they already voted for Jill Stein. And I 100% agree with them. So if Jill Stein, we vote for her, but she does not win and Trump comes into power and we get Trump as president, I truly believe that Democrats will then more likely, the people, not the party, the people in this country will more likely protest and start engaging in civic duties and make a change in this country for the better. If Kamala wins, what are we going to see? We're going to see the same bullshit we saw 4 years ago when people said, oh, vote for the lesser of two evils because we can't let Trump win again and we'll make change then. What fucking change have you guys made in the last 4 years? I would love to know. I would love to know what change we have seen in the last 4 years. We have seen Arabs and Muslims dehumanized and a genocide perpetrated by the current regime in America. We are seeing the Democratic Party in America commit a genocide while all of you fucking idiots on Facebook and Twitter who claim to be all about human rights and claim to be liberals have stayed completely silent. So I would love to know what you're going to do if Kamala wins. Like, what are you going to do to make change in this country? Like, really, what are you going to do? I want to see a plan laid out because you guys didn't fucking do anything for the last 4 years. For the last year that a genocide has been committed, I have not seen these people once post about the genocide. Has Eric Lang once condemned the genocide? No. Has Eric Lang once condemned the dehumanization of Arabs and Muslims? No. Has he once condemned Zionism? No, absolutely not. He has not done any of these things. Yet he had absolutely no problem after October 7th giving another shit take of his about Israel and Palestine. So it was important enough when Israelis were killed on October 7th for him to give yet another shitty take of his like he did back in 2021, but since then has never condemned the genocide and is now telling people to vote for the lesser of two evils. The lesser of two evils is still fucking evil, okay? So no. And then the comments on this post like are just infuriating. So Trey Chambers, who unfortunately designed a game that I really like, Harvest, he commented, lukewarm take, you'll always be voting for the lesser of two evils. Do your civic duty because people voting for the greater evil will. And then look and, see who comments on this post. Miklos Fitch from Our Family Plays Games. He says, do people get what the orange fool will let happen to Gaza if he is unleashed? Come on. Okay, Miklos and Trey, please fucking tell me what you guys have said about the genocide in the last year and 1 month. Please fucking show me what you have done to condemn the genocide. Please fucking show me what you have done to fucking condemn Zionism, which is the Nazism of today. Show me something that shows me that you've actually fucking cared about Gaza for the last year and are not just doing it for the moral high ground now to fucking vote shame people who are voting for Jill Stein, because this is fucking vote shaming. That's what this is. You are fucking vote shaming people who are voting for Jill Stein, claiming moral superiority by saying, oh, well, look at what's going to happen to Gaza if the orange fool wins. Miklos, you accept Zionist blood money, and you have been accepting Zionist blood money for years now. I've been calling you out in every single video, basically pointing out that you accept Zionist blood money. Helena Kappel and her husband are fucking Zionists, and this has been apparent since 2021. If people have any intelligence whatsoever, they can put two and two together. You can listen to my recording from 2021 in which Helena Kappel repeatedly says that she does not know what the difference is between Palestinian Lives Matter and Black Lives Matter. And she will not send a review copy to someone who says Palestinian Lives Matter, because God forbid anyone talk about Palestinians being blown up by the Israel, the state of Israel, the terrorist state of Israel. She is a fucking Zionist. And if you accept money from Zionists, you are accepting blood money. There is a reason that pro-Palestinian people, anti-genocide people have been boycotting companies that support Israel. They are boycotting blood money. We do not want to support the state of Israel in any way whatsoever, but by accepting blood money, you are. So yeah, you can claim all you want that you care about Gaza. You do not fucking care. You accept Zionist blood money. And, if it were, Black Lives Matter, would you accept money from white supremacists? Would you accept money, a sponsorship from the Ku Klux Klan? I would really love to know, because you might as well. If you claim to care about Gaza and you're accepting Zionist blood money, then you might as well start accepting sponsorships from the Ku Klux Klan, because it's no fucking different. It is no fucking different. So Miklos here cannot take the fucking high road and pretend that he fucking cares about Gazans, Palestinians now. You do not fucking care. You have not once condemned the genocide. You have not once condemned Zionism, and you fucking won't, because you care more about money in your pockets than you do about Palestinians. And Trey responds, I feel like a lot of people either don't know or don't care. They seem more interested in punishing the Democrats than actually helping Gaza, which is ironic considering how important they say Gaza is to them. How important is Gaza to you, Trey? I would like you to show me one post you've made within the last year talking about the genocide of the Palestinians. Show me one fucking post you've made from your own personal Facebook, from Twitter. I've checked your Twitter. There isn't a single post condemning the genocide or talking about it or Zionism or anything like that. Not one single post. I'm not friends with these people on Facebook. Miklos has me blocked on Facebook. I'm not friends with Trey Chambers on Facebook. So show me one fucking post that, that can show us that, okay, you actually care about Gaza and you're not just using it to claim moral superiority now and vote shame people for voting for Jill Stein. Like, complete fucking bullshit. And then Miklos goes on to say, bingo, I roll my eyes at the folks who say they care so much for the Palestinians and rail against the people that might try to help, because Lord only knows what will happen if the orange one steps in. Again, Miklos, show us what you have fucking done to help the Palestinians. Such fucking bullshit. Such fucking hypocrisy coming out from these people's mouths. But you know what? Are people gonna say anything? No. And let's be honest about why no one else in this industry will say anything to Miklos. Because he's black. Like, that is the honest truth. He is an African American, so people are not going to fucking call him out for his shitty takes when he makes them. And this is a shitty take. He is a fucking hypocrite. He accepts Zionist blood money and is now pretending to care about the Palestinians. It is complete fucking hypocrisy. But no one's going to fucking call him out for it because he's black. And that is the honest truth. No one's going to call out Eric Lang for his absolutely shitty takes because he's black. That is the honest truth. So they can get away with their shitty takes because of their minority status. But I, as a Muslim person of color, have repeatedly been attacked by these same people for my supposed shitty takes. So there is a complete double standard in this industry. Muslims and Arabs have always been dehumanized, even in this industry. Like, you do not fucking care about diversity, equity, and inclusion until you recognize your own implicit biases, until you recognize your own Islamophobia, and until you recognize what fucking hypocrites you actually are. So yes, Miklos, and yes, Eric, and yes, Trey, you all are fucking hypocrites. You all do not fucking care about Gaza, and you can pretend all you do, but we can all see the truth. So show us some fucking proof that you care about Gaza and Palestinians, or get off this fucking high horse trying to shame voters into voting for a genocidal bitch. Okay? So I'm not going to vote for Harris, and I will encourage everyone to vote for Jill Stein so that maybe someday we can actually see some fucking change in this country and not have a fascist in power, whether that's a Democratic fascist or a Republican fascist. And yeah. And Miklos went on to say, did folks listen to what folks were saying in the crazy MSG rally? And then Trey says, they don't care what Trump said or that he's much worse. They want to punish Dems. Sigh. Such fucking morons. Like, seriously, go fucking educate yourselves and go fucking read a book about Palestine before you pretend to fucking care about Palestinians or know anything about how Arabs and Muslims in this country feel, or people who have empathy for the Palestinians, which you guys have none of, because you have not spoken up once for the Palestinians. You have no empathy for the Palestinians, and you have been affected by the propaganda that is spewed by Israel and the Zionists in this country. It is very mainstream. And if you want to break down all the propaganda, read this book, which we are now reading in my book club. Like, seriously, you people are just fucking ignorant and stupid. Yeah, so I just cannot deal with these hypocrites in this industry. And then Miklos also commented, but you know what? For us Americans, we are dealing with a real evil. So the choice this year should be clear. What is fucking more evil than genocide on this planet? Can someone please tell me what's more evil than genocide? I would really like to know. What is more evil than genocide? And here we have yet again someone who's never spoken up against the genocide talking about real evil. Sorry, but nothing is more fucking evil than genocide. Nothing in this world is worse than a genocide. Nothing is worse than dehumanizing millions and millions and millions of people and allowing their killing to be just completely normalized. Like, you all can just go on with your daily lives. You all don't even bother to look at the images and the videos coming out of Gaza every day, like people like me look at. You don't have to look at the babies with their heads blown off and their insides spilling out of them. You don't have to look at the bodies that are completely torn to shreds and limbs just all over the place, people just picking up a hand here, a finger there, a foot there, and cradling it because that foot belonged to their mother and that's the only piece of their family they have left. You don't view these images and videos every day like I do, or people who actually have a sense of humanity do and actually care about the Palestinians do. Miklos Trey and Eric Lang don't fucking give a shit about the Palestinians, but now they will use the Palestinians to vote shame those of us who do. Like, fuck them, fuck them, fuck them. Like, seriously, just fucking fuck you. You all fucking suck. You all are fucking ignorant. And until you start reading some books and educating yourselves about what's happening in fucking Palestine, you don't get to vote shame people. You don't get to fucking do that. Like, no, you all are a bunch of fucking hypocrites. Like, you know who I would maybe listen to? Pro-Palestinians who are genuinely concerned about what's happening in Palestine and have protested, have signed letters, have done so much activism within the last year to educate people about the genocide, being concerned about Trump winning and Kamala losing because maybe they truly think that that's the way to make a change. But you know what? From what I've seen, every pro-Palestinian person I know, everyone I know who is against the genocide is voting for Jill Stein. And why are we voting for Jill Stein? Because she's the only candidate who is against the genocide. And, you know, she is Jewish. She's a Jewish anti-Zionist who is against this genocide. She is the only candidate who is voicing very strongly that she will put an end to genocide. What did Kamala Harris say? She said she will not get in Israel's way for anything. She will smirk when she talks about dead Palestinians. She will sit there and start talking about the cost of groceries. She does not fucking care about Palestinians. She cares just about lining her pockets, just like you do, Miklos. So maybe that's why it's so easy for you to vote for her, because you both are the fucking same. You just care about getting that Zionist money in your pockets. Like, that's all you care about. You don't fucking care about Palestinian lives. You just care about your Zionist sponsorship. And that's exactly what Kamala Harris cares about. She just cares about getting money from AIPAC and just making all of these Zionists fucking happy. So no, we are not going to fucking vote for Harris. I have yet to meet a single pro-Palestinian person who is going to vote for Harris. Have not met a single one yet. So no, you don't get to vote shame us. If you're going to vote shame us, we get to vote shame you for being on the side of genocide, for being on the wrong side of history, for being the same people who would have just stood by and let the Holocaust happen during World War II. You are the people who would have stood by as Jews got, sent off to concentration camps, as they were burned alive in ovens, as they had the horrific things happen to them, as are happening today to Palestinians. The same exact things that happened to the Jews during the Holocaust are happening to the Palestinians now, because the victim becomes the victimizer. The victim becomes the perpetrator of this evil. And that's what they are. That's what Zionists are. They are the Nazis of today, and that's who you are supporting when you vote for Kamala Harris. So if you are going to vote shame me, I'm going to fucking vote shame you for being on the wrong fucking side of history. And years from now, when people ask, how did the genocide of the Palestinians happen when you already had the Holocaust happen years ago and you all said never again? So how did it happen again? Please tell us how it happened again. We would love to know. And we can just be like, yeah, it happened again because people actually don't fucking care about Arabs and Muslims. Never again apparently only applies to a certain group of people, and never again doesn't mean never again always. It means never again during certain times, I guess. So never again does not mean never again for all of you who are voting for Kamala Harris. You all are aiding and abetting a genocide. You all are happily voting for a genocidal maniac. You all have not said a single word against this genocide, and now you all are trying to take the higher moral ground and claim moral superiority and saying, oh, but things are only going to get worse for Palestinians if Trump comes into office. Don't fucking pretend to care about Palestinians. Just admit what you are. Just admit what you are. And because we can all see what you are. You don't fucking care. It's unbelievable. I recently had someone come onto my Twitter profile, a couple of people recently, like they've been going kind of crazy on my Twitter profile, like, you know, calling me names and saying that I'm a dipshit for voting for Jill Stein. Recently, someone by the name of Gabe Hicks, Gabe James Games. So here is someone who was in the TTRPG community. Did not know about this person's existence until he commented on a tweet of mine yesterday claiming that I can vote for Jill Stein because I will have my cushy lifestyle regardless of who comes into power. My cushy lifestyle. He called me privileged. Me, a Muslim American woman who has faced Islamophobia, who had to sit in a class in constitutional law in law school and watch multiple people in her class raise their hands and say that they want to put all Muslims in internment camps, which includes me. So I have experienced Islamophobia firsthand. I've gotten to witness it even in law school with people who would become the future lawyers and politicians of America. I got to witness them raise their hands and tell me that I should be in an internment camp. But I'm so fucking privileged. Me who has never been without a job since the age of 18. Not once have I ever been without a job. I have worked more retail jobs than I bet this dude has, who is accusing me of being privileged. I have worked hard to get to where I am. And if people, you know, I've been called an elitist before in this industry. I've been called privileged before. Like, people really just do not know anything about me. If I were so fucking elitist, I would not have worked as a legal aid attorney for 7 years trying to keep people from becoming homeless. And why did I do that? I did that because I actually fucking care. Like, all of my internships when I was in law school were in public interest. I now have a position in diversity, equity, and inclusion. Why? Because I actually fucking care about things. I am not privileged. I have never been privileged. I have a shit ton of student debt to pay off. I have over $300,000 of student loans to pay off, and I'm doing public service loan forgiveness as a way to try to pay that off. If Trump wins, there's a chance that that could be taken away. There is a chance that public service loan forgiveness could be taken away. But am I going to vote for Kamala Harris and put my own interests above a genocide? No, because in my view, there is nothing worse than a genocide. So you can fucking call me privileged all you want. It's not true. I am not an elitist. I am not privileged. I've never been privileged. So all these lies that are coming at me, like, who the fuck is this Gabe Harris person? So I Googled him after he came at me for, claiming that I'm privileged and saying that I have a cushy lifestyle, which I worked really fucking hard for, as did my sisters. Like, my two sisters are doctors. We did not have a cushy lifestyle growing up. My father died in a super horrific car accident in 2010, leaving my younger sister, who is 12 years younger than me, without a breadwinner in the family because my mom didn't work. My mom still can't work because of health issues. Yet somehow we're super privileged. We have all fucking worked really hard to get to where we are today. We have had to take out student loans or get scholarships or whatever. We've worked fucking hard to get to where we are today, and you could work fucking hard to get to where you want to be too. I mean, do I acknowledge that there are inequities in the society? Absolutely. But you do not get to call me privileged because I had to work hard to get to where I am. I did not have anything handed to me on a silver platter. Like, unfucking believable. But anyway, this Gabe Hicks person, I decided to Google him, and there was like some whole controversy about him being manipulative, a liar, a cheater, blah, blah, blah. He got basically shunned from his TTRPG industry and is trying to make a comeback. And for whatever reason, this person decided to come onto my Twitter profile when I didn't even know who the hell he was and just attack me and call me privileged. And he recently, even before then, responded to another tweet of mine, which I just ignored, where he said that my cats don't love me. Like, oh, huge burn. Like, honestly, he thinks my cats don't love me, then he honestly does not know my cats. Like, insane. Like, fucking insane. I just cannot deal with these people. So that is my rant about the elections. And if you're going to vote shame people, we get to vote shame you too. We get to vote shame you for being on the wrong fucking side of history, for being in support of genocide. So, and I will remind everyone, like 10 years from now, because I have said time and time again, I'm not fucking leaving this industry. You can try to drive me away all you want because you don't like that I point out all the hypocrites in this industry. You're not going to drive me away. If I ever leave this industry, it's going to be because I chose to leave it, because I decided I no longer wanted to shoot content. But for, you know, for the time being, I'm here, and as long as I'm here, I'm going to point out all of the hypocrites in this industry. I'm going to point out all of the double standards in this industry. And years from now, if you people claim to have been on the right side of history during the Palestinian genocide, I will remind you all that you were not on the fucking right side of history. You were absolutely on the wrong side of history. You are absolutely staying silent about the genocide in order to get that Zionist money coming in, because you all are fucking Zionist shills. So no, you cannot vote shame me. You cannot vote shame anyone else who is voting for Jill Stein. We are voting for Jill Stein because we want the genocide to end, and she is the only candidate who will make that happen. And if Trump comes into power, more will be done by the people in this country who claim to care about democracy than would be done if Kamala came into power, to be quite honest, because you guys aren't going to do shit if Kamala is elected. And if she is elected, I will be keeping a close eye on all of you to see what you do in the next 4 years and whether you actually say anything about Palestine and the genocide. Because I'm pretty sure you're not going to say shit, just like you haven't said shit for the last year. So yeah. So anyway, so my plea to you as a Muslim American of Arab descent is, and yes, I am of Arab descent. I am a descendant of Prophet Muhammad on both sides of my family, which, you know, I have family tree books that go all the way back to Prophet Muhammad. So yeah, so I am of Arab descent, and I am asking you, as someone whose distant relatives are being exterminated in Palestine, to have a fucking heart, to have a fucking conscience, to have some empathy, and imagine what you would do if it was you who was being exterminated, if it was your people who were the victim of a genocide. Would you vote for the party that is committing that genocide? Would you? If it were Jews right now who were being exterminated, which we know is never going to happen again because of how fucking powerful AIPAC is, and it should never happen again. No one should be the victim of a genocide. But let's imagine for a second that it was Jews right now who were being exterminated. Do you think people would vote for the regime that is enabling, that is completely taking part in that genocide? Do you think people would then vote for the Democratic Party, which is completely taking part in a genocide then, if over 100,000 Jews had been killed? Absolutely not. Everyone who says that they would vote for Kamala regardless are fucking liars. They are liars. You would not be voting for Kamala if over 100,000 Jews had been killed by our tax dollars in the last year. But because it's Palestinians, because it's Arabs and Muslims, you don't fucking care, because you have given into the dehumanization of Arabs and Muslims. You have fallen for all of the Israeli Zionist propaganda, so you just don't fucking care. And if you really truly cared about diversity, equity, and inclusion, you would examine all of this in yourself. You would examine why you don't fucking care that a genocide is happening, and you are happy to have the ruling party continue on ruling and continue with this genocide. So fuck all of you who are trying to vote shame the rest of us who actually care about the genocide and who've actually spoken up. Like, seriously, just fuck you. Okay, so I hope you all will vote for Jill Stein, and we'll see what happens. We'll see who comes into power. And if Trump wins, it's not our fault. It's not the fault of those who voted for Jill Stein. You could have voted for her too. You could have actually voted for her and made a difference. But yeah, so I guess we'll see. We'll see what happens. So yeah, so get out and vote. All right, let's move on. So this week's question of the week is inspired by Paella Park. What is your favorite amusement park themed game? I have played Funfair. I actually own Unfair as well, which I have not played it. But if anyone has played Funfair or Unfair and can remember, is that game actually about visiting various attractions in an amusement park? Because one of the comments that I've seen on this game is that it's one of the very few games that is about visiting an amusement park and not actually building an amusement park, like the Grand Carnival, for example, or other games that exist like that. But this was a super fun game, and if you are looking for a fun amusement park themed game, I'd recommend this one, but let me know in the comments below what other games exist about amusement parks, and especially visiting amusement parks, and which one is your favorite. And until next time, bye!